The United States map isn't splitting apart just yet, but it's certainly under pressure. In Texas, the idea of sovereignty is gaining traction in legislative halls. In California, surveys reveal millions ready to part ways. And up in Alaska, talk of secession is no longer just fringe chatter, it makes headlines. What's happening here? These aren't just isolated murmurs anymore. Across the country, counties and states are quietly questioning something once unthinkable. Do we still fit in this union? And as uncertainty brews, a growing number of eyes are looking north, toward Canada. Could the unraveling of the nation be closer than we dare to believe? These are the 10 U.S. states where discontent is rising fast, and in some cases, the first steps toward departure may already be underway. Number 10. California. With an economy surpassing that of many nations, California is now toying with the idea of independence. This isn't just political posturing. According to a January 2025 poll, over 60% of Californians believe the state would thrive outside the United States within a decade. That's not a small outlier, that's millions of people. Why? Because while much of America grapples with crisis, California sees itself as a major global force, a leader in tech, culture, and climate policy. But there's a new layer emerging. This push for independence is beginning to merge with a growing interest in Canada. Shared environmental priorities, political ideology, and societal values are making the northern neighbor look more familiar than foreign. Could California actually separate and align with Canada? Legally, it's almost impossible. But emotionally and ideologically, the momentum is real. In a fractured post-pandemic nation, impossible is starting to sound more like a challenge than a barrier. If California does take that leap, the shockwaves won't stop at the Pacific. They'll reverberate across the continent. Number 9. Alaska. A U.S. state that's closer to Russia's capital than America's heartland, and one that many believe never fully integrated. Alaska is more than just distant, it's strategically isolated. It's rich in oil, loaded with resources, and simmering with dissatisfaction. A 2024 poll showed that over one-third of Alaskans support leaving the Union, not eventually, but now. Why? Because many feel neglected by Washington, burdened by federal oversight, land grabs, and funds that never seem to reach the frontier. And where do Alaskans look? Straight across the border, toward Canada. Similar climate. Shared indigenous heritage. Comparable economic structures. The idea of joining a country more aligned with local values no longer seems outlandish to some. Would Canada welcome them? Unlikely. Would the US ever approve it? Certainly not. Still, this isn't just noise. It's a growing discontent in a region that's tired of being forgotten. Before we go further, hit subscribe. It's how we stay independent and keep bringing you the stories others won't touch. Number 8. Texas. Once a sovereign republic, Texas has always held its independence close to heart. Now, its gaze toward D.C. is more skeptical than ever. In Austin, lawmakers are reviving talk of secession. Polls show nearly 1 in 3 Texans are open to breaking away. This isn't just political theater, it's a rising movement in a state that's always believed it could stand on its own. And truthfully, it might. With a GDP exceeding $2 trillion, Texas would rank among the world's largest economies if it stood alone. It's a leader in energy, agriculture, and even tech. Independence isn't just a romantic idea here, it's a calculated possibility. But the real shift? It's strategic. Texans aren't just rebelling against Washington, they're analyzing global trends. Environmental policies conflict with their energy priorities, border disputes escalate, and many view federal authority as an active threat to their way of life. That's where Canada enters the picture. It might sound strange, but for some, Canada's energy innovations, tech growth, and trade networks look more promising than continued reliance on a distant federal government. Would Texas officially become part of Canada? Almost certainly not. But collaborative policies, direct trade agreements, and shared interests, those conversations are already happening quietly in business circles and statehouses. Texas isn't just questioning if it should leave the US, it's wondering where it would land if it did. And for now, Canada's looking surprisingly attractive. Number 7. Washington. Welcome to the Cascadia conversation. Do borders really matter when your lifestyle, economy, and political values mirror another country more than your own? That's the question haunting Washington state, especially along the progressive tech corridor stretching from Seattle to Vancouver. This isn't merely geographic proximity, it's a shared vision. From green policies to public health priorities and global perspectives, Washington increasingly aligns with Canada's West Coast. This alignment forms the backbone of the Cascadia movement, a cultural push for autonomy that doesn't see Washington as America's edge, but as part of a larger, cross-border region including British Columbia and Oregon. Recent polls say about 1 in 4 Washingtonians would support separating from the U.S. to pursue a more ideologically aligned future. This isn't about chaos, it's about calculated change. Not war. Not rebellion. Just redefinition. And Canada? It's already deeply intertwined. Tech partnerships, environmental compacts, and Pacific trade routes create natural synergies. Behind the scenes, Washington policymakers are even exploring Canadian models for healthcare and housing, not as contrasts, but as potential blueprints. Could Washington formally join Canada? Constitutionally, it's almost impossible. But the desire for deeper integration, mutual alignment, and even the seeds of long-term partnership beyond U.S. federal limits? That's not going away. Before we go on, don't forget to subscribe. We bring you the facts, but more importantly, we help you see the patterns reshaping the map under our feet. If Cascadia keeps gaining ground, Washington might be just the beginning. It could be the first domino in a quiet Pacific revolution, where loyalty isn't tied to flags but to shared futures. In that world, the 49th parallel may not divide, it may unite. Number 6. Oregon. Eastern Oregon. The Greater Idaho Movement. What happens when your home state no longer reflects your values, your economy, or your identity? That's the story playing out in Oregon's rural eastern counties, where a growing rebellion is gaining ground. It's not satire. It's real. The Greater Idaho Movement is an effort to transfer more than a dozen conservative-leaning counties from Oregon into Idaho. Let that sink in. They're not leaving the U.S., they're leaving Oregon. Why? Because Eastern Oregon residents feel silenced under Portland's progressive rule. They say their votes are meaningless. Their needs ignored. On issues like gun rights, taxes, and land use, they don't just disagree, they feel strangled. So far, 12 counties have voted in favor of exploring a shift to Idaho. These aren't symbolic gestures, these are real ballot measures, passing with solid majorities. And Idaho? It's listening. In 2024, the Idaho House passed a resolution to open dialogue with Oregon. The door isn't wide open, but it's not locked, either. Of course, any border change requires approval from both state legislatures and Congress. That's a high wall. But this isn't going away. In fact, it's accelerating. The movement draws energy from rural resentment, economic struggle, and the belief that unity, as it stands, is unworkable. And now, a new idea is surfacing. Some in the region are even looking toward Canada. Why? Because for Eastern Oregon's economy, agriculture and natural resources, British Columbia's trade policies and climate strategies feel more in sync than anything coming from Salem, Oregon, D.C. Will it happen? Probably not. But will more counties join this movement? Leaving Oregon behind? That process is already in motion. This isn't just a symbolic protest, it's a growing population drawing a clear boundary in the dirt and asking, who do we really belong to? And if other rural regions follow suit, the map of the American West could look drastically different in a decade. Number 5. Colorado, the Red County Movements. What happens when half your state no longer feels like it belongs, not to another country, but not to its own government either? Colorado is home to beautiful mountains, booming tech hubs, and progressive cities. But venture outside of Denver or Boulder, and you'll hear a very different story. In Colorado's eastern rural counties, frustration is bubbling over. This isn't about policy disagreements, it's about identity. These communities don't feel slightly out of step, they feel completely abandoned. Over the last 10 years, several counties have proposed secession, some wanting to form a new state, others hoping to join Wyoming. And this isn't just talk. In 2013, 11 counties brought the idea of secession to the ballot. The vote wasn't unanimous, but it was loud enough to grab the attention of state leaders. So what's fueling this anger? It's not just disagreements over guns, energy, or taxes. It's the belief that urban elites are making all the decisions while rural areas shoulder the burden without having a voice. That sound familiar? Now, in 2025, those divisions are even deeper. Recent legislation on oil, gas, land use, and firearms has reignited old frustrations. Some local officials are done talking, they're taking action. New maps are being sketched. Petitions are being signed. And a quiet shift is occurring. Many rural Coloradans are looking to Canadian-style policies as a potential model. They're not asking to join Canada, but they're paying attention to how Canada supports rural development, broadband expansion, and agricultural subsidies, often more equitably than Denver or Washington. Will Colorado split in two? Probably not. But could this pressure spark something else? Absolutely. Because when one part of a state feels ignored for too long, they don't just stop listening, they start leaving. And when secession is off the table, migration becomes the next option. Before we move on, don't forget to subscribe so we can continue delivering stories that go deeper than the headlines. What's happening in rural Colorado isn't an isolated case, it's a signal. A nation may stay united on maps, but when communities cut cultural ties, the map starts shifting in real time. Number 4. Illinois, rural counties. Looking toward Indiana or independence. What happens when a state fractures, not geographically, but in spirit? Just a short drive south of Chicago and the divide becomes obvious. In rural Illinois, you'll see the flags, hear the conversations, and feel the distance from the urban north. The problem isn't just political disagreement, it's that many rural residents no longer believe the state government speaks for them at all. And many have lost patience waiting for change. Over the past 5 years, dozens of counties in central and southern Illinois have passed resolutions seeking to break free from Chicago's political influence. This isn't satire, it's a legitimate movement called the New Illinois Movement, and it's gaining serious traction. Why? Because rural residents view Chicago as a dominating force that shapes policy across the entire state, on everything from taxes and energy to education and agriculture, while disregarding the realities of rural life. The frustration runs deep. Some counties have gone a step further, proposing annexation into Indiana, where laws and values feel more familiar. Others want to form an entirely new state, one without Chicago's grip. Legally, it's complicated. Constitutionally, it's improbable. But emotionally, many of these communities already feel severed. They say their tax dollars fund a city they never visit, their schools are underfunded, their industries overregulated. And as Chicago pushes green energy initiatives, stricter gun laws, and rising taxes, rural areas see only red flags. In 2024, county boards in southeastern Illinois officially asked state lawmakers to discuss the possibility of breaking away. The state's response? Silence. But silence isn't a solution. Because when parts of a state begin exploring whether to join another or become their own, the issue isn't just about jurisdiction, it's about identity. And in Illinois, that sense of identity may already be gone. The only question is, how soon before the people follow? Number 3. Michigan, from jokes about joining Canada to real migration trends. Sick of the chaos. Exhausted by the headlines. Many in Michigan have shifted from quiet frustration to open humor, and now that humor is turning into something more serious. It all began with memes, mock polls, and satirical petitions calling for Michigan to join Canada. Seemed like a joke, until it wasn't. In 2024, A University of Michigan campus survey revealed that nearly 23% of participants, mostly younger voters, said they'd support annexation to Canada if it meant affordable healthcare, stable governance, and stronger climate action. That's not satire, it's a generational wake-up call. And beyond talk, thousands of Michiganders are quietly relocating across the border, especially retirees and remote workers. Why? Because right across the water, Ontario offers universal healthcare, safer communities, and a culture that feels comfortingly similar. Cities like Windsor and Ottawa, and even remote towns in northern Ontario, are seeing an influx of Americans seeking peace of mind. The Michigan-Canada connection isn't theoretical, it's historical. Detroit and Windsor operate like sibling cities. Trade flows, families connect, industries overlap. Every day, billions in commerce pass over the Ambassador Bridge. Their economies are intertwined. And that physical closeness is now turning into mental alignment. Michiganders are watching U.S. politics spiral, wages stall, and healthcare costs rise, while Canada seems to offer a steadier alternative. Sure, there's no legal pathway for a U.S. state to become part of Canada. But this shift isn't about law, it's about mindset. Before we continue, be sure to subscribe. We'll keep exploring the undercurrents that the mainstream headlines miss. These aren't just stories, they're signs of a deeper change. Because in Michigan, the joke about becoming Canadian? It's starting to feel less like comedy, and more like a plan B. Number 2. Hawaii, the sovereignty movement. How do you rejoin a nation you were never meant to leave? In Hawaii, the debate isn't about secession, it's about restoration. Because Hawaii isn't just another U.S. state. Before 1893, it was an independent kingdom, with its own monarchy, legal system, international treaties, and diplomatic presence. And then a U.S.-backed coup led to the overthrow of Hawaii's monarchy, and the islands were annexed without a formal treaty, despite widespread protests from the Hawaiian people and direct opposition from Queen Liliuokalani herself. This isn't a conspiracy theory, it's well-documented U.S. history. Jump to 2025, and the Hawaiian sovereignty movement is more active than ever. Thousands are taking to the streets, legal battles are ongoing, and the demands are clear. Some advocates are pushing for full independence, while others are calling for federal recognition as a sovereign indigenous nation, similar to how Native American tribes are recognized. Many are now openly challenging the legality of U.S. authority over the islands. Why now? Because years of military presence, unchecked tourism, rampant overdevelopment, and skyrocketing housing prices have left native Hawaiians economically displaced, frequently pushed off their ancestral lands. In parts of Oahu, median home prices have soared past $1 million, while homelessness among native Hawaiians continues to rise. This is where Canada enters the narrative. For many in the sovereignty movement, Canada isn't seen as a destination but as an example, imperfect as it may be, of a nation trying to reconcile with its indigenous history. Could Hawaii ever truly break away from the U.S.? Highly improbable. But the movement is no longer fringe, it's gaining momentum, it's better organized, and it's no longer requesting change, it's demanding justice. And now, the world is beginning to pay attention. Number 1. Florida, where fringe ideas and individual migration are reshaping identity. Can a state still feel like home when it starts to resemble its own nation? In Florida, that question isn't just rhetorical, it's visible in politics, in headlines, and in the quiet personal choices Floridians are making every day. Fringe groups have proposed everything from independence to creating a breakaway republic. While not part of the mainstream, a very real phenomenon is unfolding: mass internal migration. And now, it's not just people moving to Florida, it's people moving out, often in unexpected directions. Young professionals are heading for Ontario. Remote workers are setting their sights on Vancouver Island. Retirees are bypassing traditional southern U.S. spots in favor of places like Nova Scotia and Prince Edward Island. Why the shift? Because while Florida's sunshine may attract attention, its ballooning insurance rates, growing hurricane threats, and deepening political divides are driving people away. In 2024 alone, More than 8,000 Floridians relocated to Canada, most citing affordability, healthcare, or climate stability as their reasons. That number might seem modest, until you realize how many more are considering the same move. Some have already started applying for Canadian permanent residency. This isn't secession in the classic sense, it's a form of escape. Quiet, legal, deeply personal. Across Facebook groups, Reddit forums, and family chat threads, a new refrain is echoing. If things get worse, we're heading north. Florida may never formally secede from the United States, but thousands of its residents already have, one flight at a time. As unity continues to erode, both the loud and silent shifts happening across America suggest something more profound, a transformation in the national identity. If this video helped you see the bigger picture, support our work, subscribe, click like, and share it with someone who needs to understand what's truly unfolding beneath the surface.